Good evening, everyone. This is the May 1st meeting of the Zoning Subcommittee. This evening we have several items on our agenda. We're going to start with calendar item 17-113, a motion presented by Councillor Rotondo that the City Council have a 3-month moratorium on large-scale construction in the PD1, PDD2, RC1, RC2, RC3, GB1 and TED zoning districts. Councillor.
Thank you. Again, the issue I present to you all comes down to, we have now the sale of NECO, which is a 50-acre facility with a 40-acre warehouse abutting a commuter rail, Wonderland dog track, and Ocean Avenue. We, I think, should have a master plan, which I believe every person on this council is in agreement with. However, we don't have one. And my best estimate is Suffolk Downs is going to be developed too, as I'm sure everybody has gotten a call by the developer. So what control do we have other than the current zoning? What do we need as far as parking? What are the issues of infrastructure? What are the issues regarding school? As you probably know, this committee also has before it a request for a 25% affordable housing component. You know, as developers start to develop, they're going to try and gentrify this community. And what's going to happen to the people that live here currently that are 55 and older, for that matter, families that live here that are just, you know, really eking by, paying $2,000 for a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment? Where are they going to live? And I believe that we have a duty as a community to safeguard them as well. So that's part and parcel of this moratorium. I don't believe anybody at this point has put any permits forward, any plans forward, and if they have, clearly the mayor should be enunciating that to the council. And unfortunately, we have not had any communication from the mayor regarding any development at this point. So until that takes place, we're in the lurch. So through you, Madam President, I see the Mayor's Chief Administrator here, Omar Bukili, and if I'm saying your name incorrectly again, I apologize. If I could ask you a question, Omar? And first of all, I apologize for catching you off guard. You just walked into the room, you don't know what I'm talking about, and I really appreciate you coming up to the table. Do we have any communication from any developers at this point that they have any developments ready or proposals ready at this point for any one of our major parcels in the community that is over 10 acres? So Suffolk, Wonderland, Caddy Farms, and now NECO, which has just been bought by Joe's Inc. out of Atlantic.
Through you, Madam Chair. That's an unbelievably precise question. I'm not sure if I can address all the details of it, but I can most definitely touch on the mayor's vision and strategy. In any parcel of any significant land area, so more specifically Suffolk or Wonderland, will definitely undergo some kind of master planning process. And the reason I say some kind is we'll talk about the timeline, we'll talk about the different steps that both the city and the owners would have to agree to undertake. But there will definitely be a community process. Through
you, Madam President, see, the issue that I have regarding the master plan process, we went through this with Ocean Avenue, and I'm sure some of the councilors that were here during that time, and obviously the public, and the historical data that's relevant to it, shows that at this point, as well as up in Roseland property, and I'm sure Councillor Zambuto can enunciate regarding Roseland, we're supposed to have a hotel up there and a reconfiguration of Route 1 as part of a master plan that never got done. Down at Ocean Avenue, again, that deal was flipped, and we had voted on a project that's supposed to have a hotel down there, 150-key hotel, boutique, before any type of residential construction was built, and 1 million square feet of commercial space first. Then, obviously, the residential component, and it was supposed to be glass. I still have the actual document from the MBTA that was, part of the RFQ and RFP. And again, that's no fault of this administration in the past. It's just, unfortunately, this is how things kind of trot on. I don't want to fall into that process. And I'm sure it happened over in Somerville as well, over at Assembly Row, and the same thing over in Medford with Joe McGlynn when I had spoken to Mayor McGlynn, excuse me. When I have spoken to him, I was kind of confusing Joe Curtatone and Mayor McGlynn in the same voice. But they both...
No comparison.
No comparison. There we go, Tony.
An Irishman and an Italian, but...
They're both,
take it.
there you go. That said, they both had their hardships in those processes, and they were a 10-year process. It means a phased process, as is the waterfront park is. So I don't want to fall into that problem where we're getting solely residential at first and not the commercial. And developers are famous for going with the residential because A, it's quicker to build, B, it's cheaper to build, you can get equity on it quicker. And, what happens then? Oh, well, the commercial component fell through. We don't have our equity partners for that. And those issues take paramount. So I want to do it reverse. I want them to commit to a commercial component first and then a residential component. And I'm sure the mayor is pretty much on board with that as well.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, and just to address the 3 points really quickly. The first one is the Waterfront Square development. I think the city, just to give some context, is at its 15th or 16th amendment of that master developer agreement on the Suffolk and Wonderland master planning processes. The question of uses will definitely be addressed. I think folks will have the opportunity to show what the market is looking for, what is easily financeable, what is not as easily financeable, and what actually is where the synergy is, but in terms of timeline between the private owners and the city in terms of wants and wishes. But we are absolutely in agreement, especially the mayor. Every time we've had a conversation they allowed me to be part of, those are the 2 points that get raised: the process that needs to take place and the uses.
Madam President, I don't mean to monopolize, so if anybody, I do have further questions, but I don't mean to monopolize.
Are there any other councilors that have any specific questions regarding this issue? If you have any other commentary, allow a few more minutes, yeah? No, we have an hour.
Through you to Omar. So, I'm sorry. I should start, let's put a chair there for him, for God's sakes. You're going to be here for a while, my friend. But the issue that I have with that is that developers are always going to give you the perception that the market is bearing one thing versus another. I want to be able to peer review that. I want to be able to look at that. I remember when Joe Shea was looking for an equity partner down at the pier in East Boston, and he had a hard time finding an equity partner. And nonetheless, I was able to work with the carpenters to get them to meet over at Ameren's for that issue of finding an equity partner. So there's always someone out there willing to provide money if the commercial and or the residential part works. And that's what we should be doing, whether it be going to the unions, whether it be going to the insurance companies or the annuity companies or VC or anybody involved. So, if they're going to come up and say, well, that's not, we don't have someone that can do that, whether it be a 3%, 4% loan, I don't care. The issue is we should be also looking for that too in order to safeguard our interests. What the market bears is another thing. What we allow is also another thing, because if someone's coming here and saying, well, currently the market's strictly residential, I want to put 10,000 units there, or my dead body. That's the first word.
So, Madam Chair, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that Councillor Rotondo is using a...
It's hypothetical.
Thank you.
Hypothetical.
Nobody's talking about thousands of units or tenth of thousands of units.
Correct.
But I think I'll defer to the mayor for the crucial answer. What I would say is, if these were pieces of properties that belong to the city, then the city would have a lot more leverage and a lot more liberty in terms of the way the uses or construction is sequenced and what type of structures get built.
And I'm looking for a 25% affordable component here. So, keep that in the back of your head if conversations take place. That, I think, would help safeguard the working people of our community, You know, in the event that the market does bear a residential component, we have to protect those people too. What is the factor in, I know in Boston it's 25%. Do they have one in
Madam Chair,
Somerville?
I'm not aware of 25%
Yeah, it is
in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, it's in Boston. I was reading, well, I should say I read it in the paper the other day regarding the seaport, so maybe it's district-related, but I do remember reading it.
And just to clarify, when you're talking about affordable housing, are we talking about inclusionary housing, or are we talking about
Inclusionary.
a linkage fee to an affordable housing trust fund? What are we?
No, literally, so it's inclusionary within the development. You know, I know Cambridge has inclusionary zoning and so forth. We could do some of that here too. I mean, because whether the public wants to hear it or not, any one of these parcels, there's going to be a residential component about it. Make no mistake about it. And it's a hard pill to sell and it's a hard pill to talk about, but that's either by right or by venue. And, you know, we're going to have to control it somehow. And that's why I want the moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, what is your will of this motion? Do you want the subcommittee to vote on it? Do you want to keep it in committee? Do you have more questions for the mayor?
I think it would be wise to keep it in committee
Sure.
so that way we could debate it a little bit more and just have people talk about it.
Sure, and while we're on that subject, I'll just introduce the members of the committee that are here. So Councillor Keefe, McKenna, Powers, Rotondo, and Zambuto are all voting members of the committee. We also have in our presence Councillor Guanasso, Councillor Morbido, Councillor Patch, and Council President Haas. Did I miss anyone? No. So we'll keep this item in committee. The next item on the agenda is item 17-124. Motion presented by Councillor Rotondo that the current residential zoning be changed so that any new construction of properties posing 20 or more units be required to have 2 parking spaces for each unit within the city. Councillor.
Thank you. Perhaps that might be a number that would be bigger based upon acreage or off of some other component. As I was previously stating, I think that there's a need for this. 55 and older, veterans housing in particular. That's my thought. Again, this is something that I'd like to, you know, speak among my colleagues as well as the public. Whether it be a 25% component or a 20% component, I think at this point that we need to really start looking at protecting the people of our community. We now have close to 200 acres of developable land within our community that has great floor to area ratio, meaning that we can build expansively within these areas. We're talking transforming the community. And if we're going to do that, I don't want to gentrify our community in a manner that was done in, say, Somerville and Cambridge and in some parts of Boston, where the people of the community that made up the community, our seniors, our veterans, and our families, were pushed out because of higher rents. You know, we're talking people now in the communities I just spoke about paying $2,000, $3,000 for 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. I mean, right now, you know, a 1-bedroom apartment is anywhere between $1,400 to $1,800, and if you live in a basement apartment, it's probably a little cheaper. And you know, you've got families that are immigrant families here that are living in these apartments. They're working 3 jobs apiece. They're trying to survive. When these developments come online, it's going to increase the rents and it's going to displace people. And so I think we need to, you know, protect the seniors as well as the veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors that have any questions on this issue? Councillor Keefe?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just a question on that. I was just curious where the 20 came from. I tend to find it more of an issue of parking on the 3 to 6 unit buildings than the larger scale. Not that there isn't a lot of parking in the city as it is, but I'm not sure why we would start at 20.
Through you, Madam President. It's an arbitrary number. It's a number where we can start. This, in my opinion, is nothing that is set in stone. You know, this should be worked among all of us. We all have our different areas of the community that have different needs. Beachmont is different than Ward 6 as it is different than Ward 4 in the downtown area. Same thing in Ward 5 here with Councillor Powers. So each area has its own unique needs, and we need to fashion it in a manner that is going to benefit each particular part of the city. And so this is just happenstance that I picked that number, because usually large-scale developments, 100 units or more, you can kind of fashion some things in. 20 units, you know, you're picking maybe 1 or 2 units within a development, and you satisfy 10 or 20% of that product. But sometimes it's easier to deal in a smaller number than it is in a bigger number. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Guanasso.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's certainly something we should have conversation about, because we know what the rules and regulations are, and we know that within the TED district, and we can just bear witness to the fact that the development down in Ocean Avenue is a complete disaster, in my opinion, based on the fact that all you see is cars parked outside of the units there. There is absolutely no room for people to want to go enjoy the beach to park. It's all people trying to circumvent the, and I never knew this to be true when we signed off on this, that the parking would be per fee, meaning that they have to pay $150 to park one car and increase thereon. I just find it unacceptable. I don't think our community can handle any more of that. I think when someone makes and creates a development, they have to adequately have some parking available to those people that they're going to house in their units. I know it's costly, but the expense of it is now being incurred by the taxpayer and the people of our community to traverse our city with all these cars parked all around. And I think it's about time we put a stop to that. You know, we offer out incentives in these programs, and I know that. What incentive do you get? And one of the concessions that we give in the TED district was you could get away with the parking. But I think to bring one facet into our community to offset another doesn't serve a purpose. And I think that that's the congestion that's occurring. And I just say, and I picked Ocean Avenue per se because I experience going down there quite frequently when I visit the beach, and all I see is cars. And that's in the winter months. What is going to happen now in the summer months? You're not going to be able to travel down there, and it's going to be, lo and behold, a very, very traffic-packed area, and I think that people will be very concerned about traveling in that area. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Patrick Keefe.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just in adding to Councilor Guanasso's comments, I would actually, part of that would be if we were to give, and maybe this would be up for further discussion through Councilor Rotondo, if we were to give any leniency on parking, whether we came down sometimes on these larger units, we do come down to a 1.5 or 1.25 per unit parking space, that we would ask that it is included in the rental rather than an additional fee, because if we're granting them any sort of relief on parking, they should not be then offering it for an additional charge, because a lot of times residents aren't going to take advantage of that, and they're going to park on the streets, and exactly like Councilor Guanasso was saying. So that would be something I'd love to add to that if we continue to talk further on this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rotondo.
I'm sure we can do anything within the zoning, although I do prefer a higher car to apartment ratio for the simple fact is that most people nowadays are a two-family car household. However, yeah, no, I'm for any debate that's going to forward this cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think this is a great motion, Councillor Rotondo, and I think that you said it well when you said that every ward is very different in the city. So the parking concerns of Ward 1 are not the same as Ward 4 and Ward 6. Every ward has its own kind of unique challenges, and I think that it's going to take a lot to figure out what the best number for this would be. So would you like to keep this in committee and see if any other councils have any ideas? Clearly,
I mean, because this is going to have to, be over a process, and it's not going to happen this week, next week, or next month.
Perfect. I think it's a great motion. It's a good start for the conversation. The next item on our agenda is item 17-132, motion presented by Councilor Rotondo, that the city amend the zoning ordinances to mandate a minimum of 25% of all units built in the City of Revere to be affordable housing, whether these units are affordable rentals or for purchase. Further, that 10% of these units be designated for veterans. Additionally, that the remaining 15% be dedicated affordable for residents 55 and older. Councilor.
Again, we can change the mix. I'd rather work with the mayor's office on this because ultimately they have to actually negotiate this with the developer. We negotiate the zoning accordingly, so this has to be, a joint process. I know what 40B states, 10% and so forth, and I know some communities have more, some communities have less. Again, I'm more than happy to leave this in committee, work with the mayor and you all in order to formulate something to protect our people. At the end of the day, we're going to, have to deal with 200 acres that are going to be developed in this community. Thank you.
Any other councilors? Again, I think it's a really great motion, and I think you hit two really big topics in here, veterans and 55 plus, and I think that those are two groups we really need to make sure we protect in the city going forward with any developments that come before us. Would you like to keep this in committee as well? This will also stay in committee. The last item on our agenda is a motion presented by item 17-133, a motion presented by Council President Haas, that the mayor requests the city planner or site plan review committee to draft a zoning ordinance for the city council establishing a 6-month moratorium on billboards to allow the city to conduct a zoning study on the placement and or reconstruction of billboards, also to include electronic billboards. Councilor Haas.
Thank you, Madam President. This was done last year. It expired. At this point in time, I'd like to re-enter the motion, and I've spoken to Bob O'Brien, and Bob said he'll work with the city council and the organization out there that's pushing for this. That's about it.
Any other councilors have any comment on this? Councilor Keefe.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I also agree with Councilor Haas in this, in the sense that we have one of the highest amounts of billboards in probably in the North Shore. I do understand we have a lot of major highways running through the city, but I would say that moving forward, when we do install or allow billboard companies to install the electronic, that there's some sort of a recession plan with the other billboards that they own, as has been done in the past, but not always consistently. So I'd be in favor of this, especially if we can try and reduce the number of billboards throughout our city.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rotondo.
Thank you. I would also hope, and I'm sure Councilor Patrick can agree with this to some degree, that we send a letter to the MBTA and other agencies that have encroachments within our community and ask if they would honor this particular zoning and make them apprised that, I'm sorry, Ashley, if we could send a letter to the variety of departments and ask if they would do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilors?
That was basically the issue that was brought up, where the MBTA just put up signage next to the building, and we enter into an agreement with ourselves that we limit the number of billboards, so all of a sudden they put them up. We had no authority, and I think that's a good idea, and Bob O'Brien will do that. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you, Council President. Councilor Guanasso?
I think that's a great idea, and based on the fact that I think we have to make our public aware of the situation, that's one, the MBTA is over and beyond our control. We can't really mandate or dictate to what their rules and regulations are. But certainly, to be good neighbors within our city, they certainly have 3 locations, parking areas in our location. They have 3 stations in our city, and they should be good neighbors to all of our neighborhoods. So, putting an unsightly billboard up is not conducive to the good neighborhood. So I think that that should be part of this conversation. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilors? Councilor Patch.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good motion by Councilor Haas. Also, I'm a little kind of hard to believe that that we have no control over what the MBTA does in our city. I mean, I just wonder if we could forward this to the city lawyer to maybe write a letter to the state or investigate why what gives them the right to just come up with some legal ground of why what gives them the right to do this. Because I really feel that it probably hasn't been really looked into. And I would like to get an answer on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilors? I think it's a great motion, Council President Haas, and would you like to vote on it this evening to be voted on by the whole body? All right, so we will call the roll on this. However, I just want to say that Councillor Zambuto will be recused from this motion. Voting members are Councillor Keefe,
Yes.
Councillor McKenna,
Yes.
Councillor Powers,
Yes.
Councillor Rotondo,
Yes.
Councillor Zambuto. Oh, sorry, recused. Just reading down the list. And I will also be voting in favor of it. So this will be voted out favorably, unanimously to the council as a whole this evening. There are no further matters before our committee this evening. Thank you. And the regular council meeting will begin in a half hour at 6 o'clock.